Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? Well, we've got some people that that I expected, and there's some people that I didn't expect. But first off, my name is Hunter Dawkins. I'm the publisher, the owner, and the janitor. As you probably realize, I do everything for the Gazebo Gazette. But I want to thank the city of Long Beach for giving me the opportunity to host this event. It's the third time we've done it, and it's absolutely fantastic. And of course, the previous two times were outside. I'm pretty sure that nobody here wanted to be outside, or I would not have had that many people here. But we kind of got a little bit of an unforeseen process, but we'll make it happen with what we are going to do. But of course, not only saying thank you to the city of Long Beach, I want to especially give the introduction to one of my good friends, Alderman at Large Donald Fraser, who's going to come up here and tell you a little bit about the history of Long Beach and just tell you what everything's going on. So, hey, good to see you.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, we want to thank everybody for coming out. This is very important events to get out and know your candidates, not only on the city level, state level. It's just the best thing for our city, our county, our state. The more involved that our public is, the better it is for our entire state. Like Hunter said, my name's Donald Fraser. I'm the Alderman at Large here in Long Beach. I want to recognize Bernie Parker is an alderman here in Long Beach, and Patrick Bennett. Thank you all for coming out. Mr. Tim Pierce, our president of our school board, which, to brag a little bit, probably no help to him, but being the #1 school district in the state is something to be very proud of. It really is. So congratulations with that. So I want to thank the candidates for coming out, and especially, did I get Patrick? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, lights there and me. But I want to thank the candidates for being here, and especially their families. You know, this is not a short campaign to run, and it takes a toll not only on these candidates, but on their families as well. So I want to congratulate everybody for being here, and without further ado, you didn't come to hear me talk, so we'll start this event. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to go right at it from here. The invocation, I'm going to ask Alderman Bernie Parker to come up here and give us the invocation for the event.
Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for this day. We thank you for your many blessings and the blessings yet to come. We ask that you look over us as a nation and a city, and bless all these families that are running in the election and all. For we ask everything in Jesus Christ's name and for his sake. Amen. Do a pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, like Alderman Fraser said, bragging at least about the Long Beach School District, I'm going to allow Mr. Tim Pierce, the school board president, to come up and give us a little bit of introduction, and we want to thank you very much for being here for the Long Beach School District.
As as Hunter said, my name's Tim Pierce. I'm the Long Beach School Board President. Been on the school board for 18 years. And anytime they give me a chance to talk about our school district, I jump on it because I'm so proud of Long Beach School District. So a few things you may not know, and Don mentioned one of them, is it's kind of a big deal, but we're the #1 school district in the state. And so that is a big deal for the city of Long Beach. And here's one of the reasons why. Of all the southern counties in the state, we pay the least per pupil of all the other school districts along the coast, but yet we're the #1 in the state. So, thank you. And so we're not only doing that, I know we're going to have a debate on the sheriff's department, but it's so crucial that we have good law enforcement, because the city of Long Beach and the school board has taken security very serious, and we've spent millions and millions of dollars over the last 5 to 10 years beefing up our school district to make it safer for our kids. And so I challenge whoever will be our next sheriff to please work with the Long Beach School Board, and let's try to work together to make it a safer environment for our kids. So that's one of the goals I'm going to shoot for. Another goal is, so for you who may not be aware, we just broke ground on a new career technical education facility. So, and you say, okay, look, it's very important because a lot of these kids who aren't college bound need an opportunity to contribute to society. So we're building this new CTE facility. We'll have auto mechanics, we'll have carpentry, we'll have welding, and we'll have digital technology. So those are trades that our kids will be able to take and go out and actually contribute into society, and it will keep them off the street and make it safer for all of us. So the school district is doing the best they can with what they have, and hopefully everybody in the city of Long Beach is happy with the school district, and if you're not, please let us know. But thank y'all very much for your time.
All right. Well, now that we've got everything going, we might as well start the process. First, I would ask to come speak is Justice Court Judge Melvin Ray, who is running for the Circuit Clerk of Harrison County.
Good afternoon to all of you. Mr. President, I must tell you, I attended the investiture of Judge Brad Rath for the federal magistrate, and your choir was there, and Long Beach did an outstanding job, so something else to be very, very proud about. Yes, sir. Hunter, thank you for organizing this event and for the invitation. Yes, my name is Melvin Ray, a candidate for Circuit Clerk of Harrison County. So my introduction or the beginning of my talk today is going to be a little different than what I've done in some other events, because I want to first talk about an article that was published, I believe, this week. Much of the article, I kind of liked the end of it. It talked about me, but it was published to a person who's done their research, shared by my opponent as to be fact. And the reason that's important to me is to say, I've heard, let's make sure we don't put the election process in the wrong hands, or to paint a picture of a person who served Harrison County for 30 years, a person that you can't trust. We know my record to be different. But so let me talk about a little bit. There was one little error, and then something that the opposition has all the facts, but they didn't share that with you. So, yes, I worked for Sam's Club. I wish the author of the article would have said that, and I'd had nothing to complain about. but I was never a cashier. I was a merchandiser, a forklift driver. That's what I did for Sam's. But this is the era, this is the part that really got to me a little bit. So there's a wave of change of parties happening in this election season. But they didn't tell the whole story. So it's my campaign. I have to tell the whole story. So the rest of the story is that in 2019, as a justice court judge, I ran as an independent. The rest of the story is that in 2017, the Mississippi Justice Court Judges Association chose me as their executive director, where I served 2 terms. And part of our initiative was to say, hey, Mississippi, the circuit judges are nonpartisan, the chancery judges are nonpartisan, the county judges are nonpartisan. We want the justice court judges to be nonpartisan. So we tried to get legislation passed, and we didn't make it. And part of the issue is how do you change the election season for the justice court judges, because the other judges run in a different election cycle. So the measure didn't pass. But as their leader, I said to the conference, I said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to run as an independent in 2019. I did that. The article didn't tell you that, but it's up to me to tell my story. But the person who has the records could have said, well, you know, Judge Ray ran in 2019 as an independent. So let's talk about being an independent. The pulse of our country today, if the person, the circuit clerk, and the circuit clerk does more than elections, but if the person in charge of our election process, and we look at the pulse of our country, it's the independent people, the people in the middle, that's going to have to make things better for this country, especially when we're talking about dealing with rights. So Judge Ray, turning the election process over to him, which we know that's the election commissioners work with the elections. They're responsible for it. The Republican and the Democratic executive committees work with elections. We know all of that. But here's a fellow that for 30 years, you put in his hands the rights to allow your home to be opened with a search warrant. For 30 years, you allowed him to take your liberty away from you when you did wrong. For 30 years, I worked to protect this community. Long Beach, yes, Long Beach is part of Harrison County. So I beg of you to think about that when they're trying to make you afraid of me, or to say I have no knowledge of things or no experience. I want you to turn that and think about my qualifications. So let me continue on. So I was in Dido a couple of weeks ago, and there was a young man running for election commissioner. And of course, election commissioners are nonpartisan. They run independent. So do the judges. But he was talking about the importance of that position being one of an independent person. So I'm piggybacking on what he has said to continue to drive the theme on why I think it's important to run as an independent, the choice that I have made. So the role of the circuit clerk? We hear a lot about registering people to vote. By the way, if you're in the building and you're not registered, I have applications with me to help get you registered to vote. But it's more than talking to people about registering to vote. We've got to worry about getting them to the poll. So that's what we need to work on, promoting participation in the process. Educating the electorate. That's what I want to bring to the position of the circuit clerk. So last election, the last presidential election was my first time to vote absentee. I've always gone to the poll. I've always stood in the line because I understand the importance of doing that and how that makes me feel. But this is what I would do as a circuit clerk. I would come and put it out, explain how you fill out the absentee ballot, explain the importance of how you have to sign the label, the flap on the back, so your vote doesn't get thrown out, or if you mail in 2 applications, if your spouse lives with you, put it in one envelope. I've heard the horror stories about how some of the ballots are thrown out. But that's what I would do. I would come out and talk about the importance of participating in the jury pool. It's not just the role of the judge to talk about that. The clerk ought to be out promoting that. With Judge Ray? Judge Ray's done that. When Mississippi changed the civil rules of court and justice court, there's records of it. I opened a public forum, explained those new rules. When we changed the landlord-tenant law, who came together and said, hey, let's get everybody together and explain to our landlords and tenants about the changes in the law of the landlord-tenant? Judge Ray did that. I believe in education. I've done a lot of that. Twice, been recognized by the Supreme Court of the state of Mississippi in leadership positions, appointed by Chief Justice Ed Pittman to a 6-year term on the Judicial Performance Commission, appointed by Justice Michael Randolph to be on the committee to rewrite the civil rules for justice courts. That's the part of the research they didn't tell you about. But it's my responsibility to tell you my story. And all of that is what I'm using to say, yes, by all means, I'm qualified to be the next circuit clerk of Harrison County. Long Beach, Mississippi. I grew up in Gaston Point, 2 streets over from Long Beach. This is home to me. I remember shopping at National Foods and the K&B that was on the end of Jeff Davis. I've been in this community a very long time. 2022, they allowed me to serve as King Scott the 62nd here in Long Beach. So I'm very familiar with this community. I'm excited and very grateful for being here today. So they asked the question, well, Judge Ray, why did you resign? I resigned because the judicial canons said that I had to resign. Anytime a judge runs for a non-judicial office, you have to resign. And why do you have to resign? Because you're not allowed to use your office to advance your cause. It might be a good idea for others to follow in line with that, not to abuse your office to help to advance your cause. So I had to resign. So that's, for those who've asked that question, well, why did you resign? I had to. So what I'm asking that you do is I'm asking for your consideration. Considering on the 7th day of November to check my name to be your next circuit clerk. And so before I leave, I'll leave you with some important dates. Because I heard this said in a presentation that absentee voting begins 45 days before the election. That has no value. To tell a voter that absentee voting begins 45 days has no value. But let me tell you what does have value. The 26th day of June, you can start voting by absentee. That's the difference between me and the opposition. Okay, so I can cite statutes for you all day long. That's what I've been doing that for a long time. But what's practical? What makes sense? So really, today is the 45th day, the 24th, but because the courthouse is closed today, you can begin voting absentee Monday morning in the general election on August the 8th, okay? All right, and there was one other date I wanted to tell you about. Also, the clerk's office is open on the 29th of July and the 5th of August for absentee voting on Saturday from 8 until noon, okay? So once again, I thank y'all for letting me be here and consider voting for Melvin Ray on November the 7th for circuit clerk. Thank you.
Okay, now we will have the Assistant Harrison County Circuit Clerk, Justin Wetzel.
All right, so first I'm going to take this opportunity to, I feel like I have to, rebut some of what the great Mr. Melvin Ray has said. Yes, the article was published this week. It was written by somebody, not me. And yes, my campaign shared that article, as any other campaign would generally do. Most of that information, if not all of it, was taken straight from the candidate's website. My name is Justin Wetzel. I've been in the circuit clerk's office for 10 years. My role in the office is the Chief Deputy of Finance and Accounting. That is not the only thing I do in the office. I have other responsibilities, including working in the circuit clerk's office with voter registration, which is very important, as he said. Absentee voting, which is a very long 45-day process. We also issue marriage licenses and record those when they come back. We work with the Republican and Democratic executive committees, not in the middle of those parties. So I've worked in the front office there for 8 or 9 years, helping them with that. It's a very long process. In a general election year, we may absentee vote 3,000 people. I'm here to tell you, in 2020, when we had our presidential election, we had over 17,000 absentee votes. It's a very, very long 45 days. It's critical. Somebody with experience in the office is there to run that office. In 2024, we start absentee voting 3 weeks into office. There's no time to learn. There's no time for training. You have to be able to manage that, along with 2 court departments, 2 judicial districts. So you've got about 29, 30 employees to manage. Accounting and finance as well. There's about 85 different accounts that have to be managed, in excess of $2.5 million. Get behind on that, and the state auditor's office will be knocking on your door real quick. So a little bit about me. Went to St. Martin High School, graduated from there in 2007. Went to the University of South Alabama, where I graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. Came back home, started working in an accounting firm, local accounting firm in downtown Gulfport, where I had the pleasure of working for Miss Gail, managing her fee account and some of the other accounts for about 1.5 years, until I decided I would see if she'd be interested in hiring me in the office. She accepted that offer. Been there since November 3rd of 2013. While I was working there, I attended William Carey University, obtained my master's degree in business administration. So I have the education, the master's program. Some of you in here may have been through it. There's a lot of things that you learn from a management perspective, human resources. I mean, the general curriculum of a master's program prepares you to lead an office. To address some other issues, as far as, first of all, I do want to say I do have experience. I say experience is critical. Ms. Gail Parker is my campaign manager here. She's been in that office in the courthouse for 50 years, 24 years of that as a circuit clerk. Okay? Our current circuit clerk, Connie Ladner, in the office for 40 years, 8 of that as a circuit clerk. History doesn't lie. There's a reason why the person elected that has ran that office for the last 70 plus years, including Webb Lee, because experience matters. As far as educating our voters, I would have to say Ms. Gail Parker and Connie Ladner have done a very good job going out to our schools. We just went out to Long Beach, St. Patrick's, D'Iberville High School, Harrison Central, Pass High. We go out and register voters. Of course, you can't make them go to the polls, but while we're out there, we tell them, hey, it's important that you're registering, but we need you to come to the polls. You can educate them all day long, but unless you drive them to the polls, there's not much more you can do, but of course, we can work on that. The jury process. We speak to the grand jury twice a year. It's required. We educate the grand jury on impaneling juries, the importance of serving on juries, those such things. So, it upset me a little bit that 2 of our former clerks that have done an excellent job have kind of been degraded when they've done everything they can. When we're absentee voting, you come in, you fill out an application. We as clerks are at that counter helping them walk through the application, making sure they sign everything. We issue an absentee ballot. They fill out the absentee ballot. Of course, we can't watch them. You cannot instruct them how to fill out a ballot. They fold it up, place it in their envelope, seal it up. We make sure they sign across the seal. So no ballots are rejected. If they are, that is solely on the resolution board. That is a separate board that is put together by the county and other officials, and they make those decisions. We do everything we can in the circuit clerk's office that we're allowed to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. As I said, I've been in the office for 10 years. I've worked in excess of 20 elections. I don't know how other people feel. Elections are very important. Nobody here wants our elections in Harrison County to be like anything up north where you're finding ballot boxes in the ditches, mostly due to ballot harvesting. That's a whole nother issue I'd be certainly happy to talk about. Don't have enough time for that. And other than that, I would like to say thank you. We have some very important dates coming up. Last day to register to vote, 30 days before the election. Deadline, Saturday. Oh, Lord, I should know it off the top of my head, but there's so many dates coming up. Deadline to register to vote, July the 10th. As Melvin said, we do start absentee voting this Monday for the Republican and Democratic primary. Again, please come out. If you think you may not be able to make it to the poll or you know you're going to be out of town, there's about 15 different reasons why you're allowed to absentee vote. As long as you are certifying that what's your reason for not being in town on election day, you can certainly absentee vote. And then, of course, make sure that you come back November 7th. That's the big day that counts for both of us. Of course, both of us feel like we're the more qualified candidate, but I absolutely feel like I am the best candidate. Certainly have experience in the office and ready to run that office day one. Just remember, we start absentee voting 3 weeks into office. Managing that circuit clerk's office on top of 2 court departments and 2 judicial districts is not going to be easy. So, Justin Wetzel, November 7th and August 8th. Thank you.
Okay, if I don't see any other candidates show up here, we're going to take a 15-minute intermission, and then we'll get the show on the road. But I also wanted to recognize the former Harrison County Circuit Clerk, Gail Parker, who's been the Circuit Clerk for way before I was even born. So, you know, but thank you very much, and we appreciate it. We'll be ready to go in 15 minutes. So. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've all been waiting for. We're going to kind of slowly discuss this as they're bringing in some chairs. All right, so as you know, I did not have any time limit up until this point in time. Now, of course, I will give the candidates as much time as they realistically need to answer questions, but we don't necessarily want to be. We want to have a timeline for the first question. Well, first off, for their monologues, I'll give them 5 minutes each. Of course, they're more than willing to go over a little bit if Mr. Haley or Mr. Elias want to go over just a little bit, but we want to get into the questions. The first answer to the question, I'd like generally 5 minutes, and then a rebuttal response for about 3 minutes. Now, I'm going to keep my clock on here, but I'm not going to be like some of the past media where stop and start. I'm going to let them finish their conversation, and then after the rebuttal, the candidate that the question was asked to gets to address that for another minute. Then after, the second rebuttal comes too, because I want this to be clear and focused on what the answers and who that has the best ideas that you have, because this is not about the candidates, this is about the public general information. That's what we wanted, and that's what I talked to both candidates about. Okay, so with introduction, I want to introduce first the former, would deputy be the right word, of Harrison County Sheriff, Matt? Okay. Mr. Matt Haley. And on the second introduction, Mr. Louis Elias.
Hey, buddy.
All right, double check your mics to make sure they're all working. Let me know when y'all are ready to go.
We're ready.
Okay. Mr. Haley, I've flipped a coin earlier, and the nod was for you. So you got 5 minutes to talk about your campaign and introduction.
All right, hang on just a second.
Take your time.
I'm sure through all of y'all's phone calls today, people calling y'all and saying, hey, it's a beautiful day. What would y'all like to do today? Most of y'all said, we don't want to go on the boat. We don't want to do anything like that. Let's go to a debate. That's exactly what I said too. Thanks, Hunter. I am Matt Haley, and I'm running for Harrison County Sheriff. And before I talk to you about myself, I think there are a few things that you need to know about my opponent. On my opponent's webpage, it says that he has a 25-plus year law enforcement career. Now, when we got out of the Sheriff's Department, I retired with 26 years. My opponent resigned because he did not have the 25 years it took to retire. It also says on his website that he developed the first K-9 unit in Long Beach, which is also false. Timmy Huguet, who is here in the audience tonight, was a K-9 officer before he was in Long Beach. So enough about that. True experience matters, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I started the sheriff's office in 1997 under Sheriff Joe Price as a correctional officer. I worked my way through the jail. From the jail, I went from the jail to the transportation division. From the transportation division, I went to USM Gulf Coast Academy, graduated there as a patrolman. While on patrol, I was a DUI officer, a field training officer, a canine officer, and a criminal interdiction officer. From there, I was promoted to a criminal investigator. From criminal investigations, I was transferred to the narcotics division. From the narcotics division, I was recruited by the ATF to be the first federal task force agent of Harrison County for ATF. I spent 2 years on the ATF task force. I came back to narcotics, was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, where I oversaw the narcotics unit, and I was also promoted to the commander of the Coastal Narcotics Enforcement Team. From there, I would be promoted to an administrative captain over 3 divisions, and that's where I would spend my last 5 years. The divisions were transportation, process, and canine, and I was also over the mental health writs. I decided to retire in January to run for sheriff. I worked under 4 sheriffs throughout my career in Harrison County, and 3 of those sheriffs have endorsed me. Now, I can't tell you how humbling that is for someone like myself. It says a lot about me, and I'm getting a little jumbled up here, but I wanted to say I feel like the reason that our current sheriff has been so successful is because he used what he learned from those prior sheriffs. And when he started this, he was not a politician. He was just a cop, just like me. I've spent 3/4 of my career on the streets, not behind a desk. Thank you.
Mr. Elias, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can y'all hear me? I want to first start by telling you all what I said to my opponent at the Dido Bazaar. In our day and time, mudslinging is not what our communities need. I have instructed every individual on our campaign to refrain from any negative mudslinging. I had a promise from my opponent that we would keep it clean. We looked each other in the eyes, we shook hands and hugged and made a promise to keep it clean. I told him firsthand that I'm disappointed that that has not happened. If you cannot control the narrative on your Facebook page, how are you going to control the image of a sheriff's office? Y'all understand that the power that lies in the office of the sheriff is not about one individual. It's about a community, its peace, its quality of life. I won't go on about that, but I will tell you this, and I'll answer the allegations that he has made. 25 plus years experience are as follows. If you all would like to write them down, Mr. Haley.
I don't need to. I already looked.
Our law enforcement experience in the state is kept by Mississippi Board on Law Enforcement Officer Standards and Training. Excuse me, I worked with them for the last 15 years maintaining records. My first law enforcement experience came through the community college. 2 years of law enforcement experience riding firsthand, learning the ropes, very similar to a field training officer program. Those took place from 1992 to 1994. In 1994, I was hired full-time by Long Beach Police Department. I was emancipated at the age of 19. Went on in patrol from 1994 to 1996. I took a job with the Mississippi Gaming Commission, stayed there 1 year. Gulfport PD from 96 to 98, where I was awarded Officer of the Year for apprehending 2 armed robbers, one at the Hancock Bank on Three Rivers and Dido Road, one at the Hampton Inn on Highway 49. I went back to Long Beach, and what Mr. Haley is referring to, I'm very transparent. Where wording is wrong, I will address that. The wording should have read that I developed the first K-9 division. Within law enforcement agencies, we have different divisions that have their own rank structure. Long Beach had not seen that. I developed it, wrote the policy for it, created the structure for it. It's still in place today. From 96 to 98 at Gulfport, Long Beach, 4 years, served as a patrol supervisor as well as a K-9 supervisor. Went back to Harrison County in 2008. I signed up for the reserves in 2005. In 2005, of course, you all know things kind of got turned upside down here. Our coast experienced Hurricane Katrina. My wife and I experienced our first child being airlifted out to Ochsner Medical Center, and thank God he's okay today, but rough little ride there. But I was actually on the reserve roster with Harrison County Sheriff's Office from 2005 to 2007. If any of this you can verify with the state. I went full-time at Harrison County again in 2008. I worked from patrol from 2008 to 2010. I competed for the sergeant's position at the training academy then. I was awarded that position. I worked at the training academy from 2010 to 2023. To break that down for you, that is 13 years of first-line law enforcement experience, patrol on the streets. That is 13 years of administrative experience, actually handling budgets, writing policy. If you add those two numbers up, that's 26. So to be accused of falsifying something like that, I don't understand. However, I stand ready to clarify at any time and back it up with documentation. The fact of the matter is that none of the conversation that has taken place thus far is going to solve the problems that we face today. One of us has to tackle those issues. One of us stands here not only willing to acknowledge the problems that are within our agency, but the problems that are outside of our agency that our agency may even be causing. And once those are identified, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. You have to have a plan to address them. I have that plan. I stand ready to serve you on day one. I want you to think about the words endorsement. You cannot discuss problems within an agency without stinging a current administration. If you're on their coattails, you certainly can't do it. I haven't been able to do it while I was at the agency. You had to sit quietly. I'm able to do it now. That brings a whole nother level of transparency to you. The taxpayers, those that are wanting safety, wanting a better quality of life. But know this, each sheriff that I have worked for has already endorsed me. I was promoted 3 times through a competitive process, not handed a promotion, but having to compete through oral interviews with some pretty critical people 3 times by Sheriff Brissolera. To the rank of captain, director of the training academy, then selected to serve on a board that consisted of 5 hand-picked individuals to serve on Sheriff Peterson's transition team. That had to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. That transition team he depended on to guide the agency in the direction it needed to go from his swearing in forward. And not only did I serve on that transition team, but he promoted me once again to the highest rank in the agency, major. My position was to oversee training and compliance for all of our employees, over 300 employees, as well as our training academy that molds the law enforcement officers that you see on the streets today. We've graduated hundreds of officers and given them the ability to go out and do their job, and I'm proud of them. I'm also proud that I was entrusted with that. I have a personnel file that backs up my performance. In 26 years, I've never been written up. All I have gotten is accolades. What you are seeing today is the product of a man that has firm beliefs in transparency and accountability in doing the right thing no matter what. If it takes losing the support or the endorsement of any sheriff, I will still do what's right. I will sleep at night. And I have a higher being to answer to. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Elias, the first question is for you. As Harrison County is the second largest county in the state, how will you, as the sheriff, manage the size of the county jail, and will you bring back more work programs for misdemeanor offenses?
Our county jail is in crisis as we speak. I cannot find any time in history where our jail was more short on employees. Now, when you hear that spoken about, you're going to hear the answer that it's a nationwide problem. The current sheriff criticized the previous sheriff for being 12 employees down. Today, we're 80 down. Now, what that means to us, you would think is not a whole lot, but it is, because there's some pretty dangerous folks in that jail. And not only is it dangerous for one of them to be able to get out, which we've seen historically, but if one of them get hurt, guess who pays for it? And I say if, they've already been hurt. We have lawsuits pending on inmates that have been beat and raped and taunted. The way those things have been fixed historically is through proper training. The problem that we're seeing is a snowball effect. You don't have enough employees to send those that need to go to training to the classes. So individuals that worked on my watch would set these classes up, all the material ready, no one there to teach. But I tell you, it's not a nationwide problem, and we're certainly different than the rest of this nation in a lot of ways. But Hancock County is fully staffed, Stone County is fully staffed, Jackson County is fully staffed. They're no better than us. Pass Christian Police Department pays less for their patrolmen than our correction officers make, and they're fully staffed. That tells me one thing. We have to change the way we do business, and that starts with our management in the jail. It's that simple. Tell me the other part of your question.
The second
The
part
work
of the question
programs?
was, will you bring back more work programs for misdemeanor offenses?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a 145-bed misdemeanor facility sitting on Lorraine Cowan Road. Your taxpayers, each of your monies were dumped into that facility this sheriff's first term. Completely renovated, new showers, new cameras, new paint, new everything, and guess what? There's no one in it. It's designed for individuals that are vetted to come in, stay there, go out during the day, work, pay back their debt to society. We don't utilize it. I also commend our state legislators. House Bill number 586, if any of you all are familiar with that, that was a bill that was put into place that authorizes specific counties, including Harrison, to take advantage of a program that allows inmates to work while incarcerated. My question that I've not gotten an answer for is, why are we not taking advantage of that? It's a great program. I will take advantage of that. I will put people back into the work center get them back to work for the community. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Haley, if you don't mind with the rebuttal.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where those numbers are coming from, but as of June 21st, Jackson County has a jail that houses 330 inmates. They're down 13 employees, 13 correctional officers. Hancock County has 350 inmates. They're down 14. Hinds County, they house 40 more inmates than what Harrison County houses, is down 104 correctional officers. We are down 65. We're not down 80 or 85. And as far as the work center goes, the repairs and the things that were done at the work center were done out of drug forfeiture funds. It wasn't done out of your tax dollars, just so we're clear on that. The problem is the officers and the recruitment. Recruitment is what we have to change. You can say that you're going to open the work center and you're going to do all of these things, but unless you have the bodies to do it, it's not going to happen. And we don't have the bodies to do it, or it would have already been done. The recruitment is what we have to change. And it's got to change day one. That's all.
Mr. Elias, if you want to rebut.
Sure, absolutely. Whether it's 65 or 80, it has been 80 just as recent as a couple of weeks ago. But whether it's 65 or 80, it's unacceptable. And I think my opponent just said it all in that we have to change the way we do business, which contradicts his statement of, if it's not broke, you don't fix it. It is broken, being 65 employees down in the jail, having jailers asked to do a job that is very dangerous, that requires specific training to do, and not allowing that training to take place is unacceptable at very least.
Mr. Haley, you have the final rebut.
No.
Okay. The next question will be asked by my fellow reporter here, the student from the Pascagoula School District, Jacoby Johnson.
This is for Matt Haley. The size of the Harrison County Sheriff Department has become an issue for the public. What way would you as sheriff create better opportunities for law enforcement?
I'm sorry, repeat that? The size?
Yeah, the lack of the sheriff county.
The shortage of officers.
The shortage of officers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, it goes back to what I said before. We're going to have to change our recruiting methods. I personally feel like that we have lost a generation of officers with the defunding the police and the officer shootings and those sort of things. And, you know, it's not fun to be the police anymore. And we've got to get back into these schools, into these colleges, and start not necessarily pushing people to be law enforcement, but pushing people towards that sort of career. You know, there was a time when I worked for the agency that we were using drug forfeited money to allow our employees to go back to college. And I think if we were able to go back to that, it would encourage some of these college students that are getting their criminal justice degree to maybe seek us out and come to work for us. You know, I don't know if that's the best answer, but at this point we have to start trying different things than what we're trying right now. You know, we don't have a lot of there's not a lot of effort or not the amount of effort that it should be put into our recruitment or retention.
Mr. Elias?
Once again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It is broken. We are recruiting in ways that are not productive. We are retaining in ways that are not productive. Specific examples. Are we taking questions now?
Not right now. No.
Okay, I was going to answer it. These are specific examples of what I'm speaking of. You have an application process with us that is online. From 2012 to 2023, that application process set broken, where if someone was interested in coming to work for us and they filled out the application online, it disappeared. I sat on an oral interview board where a man came in to apply to work in our jail, which is a tough job. He's already served in the military. He's in a pair of jeans, which both of us are in today. He's in a work shirt that's pressed, and he interviews very well. He's got grit, he's got structure, he's got discipline. He was disqualified because he wasn't in a suit. He's not applying for an executive position. When I say the way we do business is flawed, those are things that have to change from the get-go. And then once we are able to hire someone, if they experience problems and you see people leaving in masses, any smart businessman knows you do exit surveys. You have to identify those problems to address them. We don't do that. It is broken. But you start doing that day one. The employees that I've reached out to, one of which was with us for 15 years, never had any problems whatsoever. One of the nicest ladies you want to meet. She took a job with CSX. She said, I love my job, but no one cares. That's what we have to change. That brings morale up. It brings a day back where people want to go to work. And again, I tell you, it can be done. It can be done because Pastor Christian's doing it. There's other agencies that are doing it. They're not better than us. And these numbers of being 13 down in other jails, that's impressive at first glance, but it's nowhere near the ratio that we're down, number one. And number two, they're taking our inmates. If Pastor Christian arrests someone, they have to drive them to Stone County to incarcerate them. Y'all understand what this is doing to our community. You can walk into a business. Our cities don't have jails. They depend on us. That's part of the taxes that everyone that lives in Harrison County, whether in incorporated areas or unincorporated areas, they pay for this service. So now when you go into a business, you would think we're in some far left state. Go in and do $1,000 worth of damage, steal $1,000 worth of goods, shoplift. You don't go to jail. That's turned on a vacuum cleaner for criminals. Getting back to the basics is absolutely necessary.
Mr. Haley, rebuttal.
My opponent keeps saying if it's not broke, don't fix it, and I think he's misconstruing things. The sheriff's office is not without flaws. It's not. I mean, it has its share of issues. But I can tell you, out of the 4 sheriffs that I have worked for, it has gradually gotten better. And right now, the sheriff's office is running great. Now, I'm not saying that there's things that don't need to be addressed or fixed, because there is. There's absolutely issues that have to be fixed. And I plan to address those issues. The issues that my opponent is speaking of are the same issues that I will be dealing with also. The issues with the misdemeanors and people not getting arrested, that's a lot bigger picture than what you think it is. But he is correct. We take misdemeanor arrests at the jail, but we only have so many availabilities for those. We have X amount of officers and X amount of space. And the sheriff is not willing to sacrifice the safety of the officers that are there to put somebody else in a bed. And I wouldn't either.
Mr. Elias, final rebuttal.
Again, let's go back to statistics and not opinions. First, I hear that over the last 2 sheriffs, things have gradually gotten better. It has not gradually gotten better. We were 12 employees down in the jail at the end of Sheriff Brissolera's term, and if we use Mr. Haley's numbers, we're 65 employees down. That's not gradually getting better. That's landsliding to the worst. I don't understand how any interpretation could come about other than this. And the fact that we don't have the space is not fact. We have 145 beds sitting empty on Lorraine Cowan Road. And the reason that we don't have the employees is because the way we treat them, the way we do business. We change that. We're able to start taking people that commit crimes again and doing our job. But it has to change, and it has to be acknowledged as a problem, what it is.
Mr. Haley, since the Harrison County Board of Supervisors granted the sheriff beach patrol a few years ago, will it be your request to increase the size, and what plan of duty will the officers provide for beach services?
I think that's one of those things that we're going to have to play by ear. You know, as this community grows, and if we see a need for that to increase, then of course that's something that we're going to have to address then. But right now, the way Beach Patrol is going, I think it's doing well.
Sorry to follow up with this, but would you consider this with the Black Spring Break scenario in Biloxi? Would that be something all in that situation with what's going on in Beach Patrol?
So normally in those type of events, we pull from every direction. So it definitely would not just be Beach Patrol. You know, we use all of our assets in those situations, and not just that. I mean, cruising the coast and different events that happen, you know, down on the beach.
Mr. Elias?
So our beach patrol has evolved from, give you all a little bit of insight. Years ago, we had a couple of two-door Chevy Blazers running the beach and four-wheelers during the day. I see one of the guys here that used to actually work that. Then we went to the side-by-side Polarises, and we took those away and went back to four-wheelers. And the reason that was done, I was privy to those meetings, was for safety. Visibility, being able, a deputy being able to see where he's going so we don't accidentally run over someone. Just recently, we purchased Jeep Gladiators, and we jacked them up and put nice wheels and tires on them, and they're on the beach. So I don't know how we got past the safety part of that and why we needed to jack them up and put pretty wheels on them, but they're there, and I think that they're doing a great job. Our beach patrol does. We move individuals around. If they're school resource officers during the school time, when they're off, they're on the beach. So I think we're doing an adequate job. And as far as Black Spring Break goes, I can tell you that that's a whole nother topic, and we can discuss it whenever you're ready.
Okay. Mr. Haley, rebuttal?
No.
All right.
Mr. Elias, you have
Yes.
built your campaign off of safer schools. How would you create safer schools if you are elected sheriff?
Absolutely. So y'all, one thing that I've received a lot of criticism on is not putting out specific details on a plan. I'll tell you something that I learned when I went through the Secret Service school years ago. You don't give the bad guys everything. But I will tell you this. We go from reactive, which is what we're doing now. We wait for someone to call and say, there's a shooter at a school, and we're going to respond. My opponent offered up the idea of an attack team being put together to respond to these incidents. It's inadequate. It's already been proven, not by my opinion, but by statistics. In the last 30 years, there's not been one active shooter incident in our country that was resolved by attack team. What our model does is involves numerous law enforcement agencies and their resources, from the sheriff's office to all of our police departments to the state's Homeland Security to Keesler's threat mitigation to the FBI. We all work together to address this problem. Also, intelligence. You have to work to identify threats before they cause a problem. And that can be done. 2019 proved that for us. If y'all remember the school shooting in Florida, that individual that was going to do that shooting, statistics also show that in over 88% of these incidents, more than one person knows this is going to happen before it does. We know from our years in law enforcement that where information is, it can be shared. This was shared. It was shared to an individual from here in Gulfport that I know. He did the right thing. He passed that information on to the FBI. The FBI sent it to their field office in Miami. And because there's really no structure in place to deal with this information, it sat on a desk long enough for children to lose their lives. That's what will change. And it's not something that was thought of overnight. This has been worked on since 2014 with schools from all over the coast. It also involves a training aspect where instead of just seeing law enforcement training to respond as one agency to an incident, it's all of the agencies, including your fire, your ambulance services, your public works, your cellular companies. Anyone that has been around any of these incidents or the claim of one of these incidents will tell you you lose the ability to communicate. That causes catastrophic failure. And y'all pay close attention. It's probably the first time you've heard this much detail, and you're going to hear it again. It's probably going to come from my opponent. Other reason that we just don't let stuff out. But you're starting to see the inside workings of this model. And it's ready to go day one. We're not playing anything by ear. There's too much at stake. Thank you.
Mr. Haley, your rebuttal.
So I've never said anything about putting a TAC team together. What I said was we would provide training above what is learned in the police academy for our officers that are on the street for when these incidents may or may not occur. You know, we've heard about this plan for saving the schools. I have for the last 10 or 12 months, but it's just been smoke and mirrors. There's never been no meat to this. You know, I've caught wind of it may be some sort of task force, and you know, if that's the case, the biggest problem with task force, because I've been part of several of them, is filling them. These agencies don't have the amount of people that just overflow and you can just stick them wherever. I mean, it sounds good, but that's not the case. Your resources belong in your district. There are 5 different school districts in Harrison County. 5 superintendents, 5 school boards, and 5 attorneys that all have to be on board for this, whatever this plan is. The sheriff's office responsibility they're responsible for the schools and their district. Now, would we help other schools out? Absolutely. But for us, we are responsible for our schools. I said that I would put canine units back in the schools, narcotics, and gun detection, or black powder, if you will, and enhancing the training of our officers more than that in the academy, and implement a proactive task force that is already going. It would just be putting a body in that task force, and focus on reducing gun crimes and violence among juveniles. And I also said that I would create a cyber analyst position to monitor the social media of these young people in school.
Mr. Elias.
My goodness. It's a cyber analyst position. And maybe this comes from me being a part of our administration, privy to staff meetings, quite a bit longer than my opponent. I'm talking about 12 years, 12 years in the staff meeting room as opposed to 3.
5.
Last debate that we had, Mr. Haley mentioned that we would hire a community relations officer, which we already have, Lieutenant Robert Lincoln. And he said then, and he said it again now, that we would hire an analyst, an intelligence analyst, who we already have now. She does a great job. I don't even know how else to answer that. We already have that resource. The other parts of our plan have been well thought out. It's not just by me. I'm not a school security expert, but I don't have an ego that's so big that I won't reach out to them. When we were faced with schools across our county needing assessments done, I'll give you an example of what I tell our students at the academy. Law enforcement houses the largest egos known to man. And sometimes that gets in the way of productivity. Sometimes it gets in the way of protecting children. I find that unacceptable. Each of our school districts were asking for assessments to be done through their respective law enforcement agencies. I brought on board Keesler's threat mitigation team. Long Beach school districts took advantage of that. Those guys are school security experts. They're trained in war zones to do these assessments. But in Harrison County, they did not want that. Our administration said we're good enough to do it, but the only reason I don't think we're good enough, is, including myself, is that we're not trained in that. Our citizens, our children deserve better, and that's what we're doing. We're bringing experts in to help resolve a serious problem. Thank you.
Mr. Haley?
So Homeland Security is already doing these threat assessments. I spoke with him 2 weeks ago. And he's right. We have an analyst, and she is an intel analyst, and she works closely with narcotics and criminal investigations. This is completely different what I'm talking about doing. That's it.
Okay. The next question.
Hunter, do I have the opportunity to respond real quick?
Well, that was the second
Okay.
rebuttal.
Thank
so-
you.
Okay. The next question with Mr. Haley. How can the Sheriff's Department work with the hospitals, centers, and other agencies to make sure mental health patients avoid the county jail?
So our current sheriff will not house mental health patients unless he has a writ from the judge. And I think he's right by that. The county jail is not a place for a mental health patient. We don't have the ability to treat them, and it's one of those deals that that's the last straw. If we get a writ to take someone, it's because the mental health facility literally cannot control them. And I would continue that same practice. Being over the transportation division, I dealt with all of the mental health writs. So my people would go out and pick people up on these civil commitments. So we have a close relationship with all of the mental health facilities, and always have. Through that, I become part of a mental health board where we traveled to Kansas City to view a diversion center to bring back here to the coast. Now, a diversion center would be an in-between. You know, it's not quite a commitment facility, and it's not on the street. It's just an in-between to help people with if they can't get their medicine, or maybe they just need to be off the street for a little while, or they just need some help in some sort. Now the ball is rolling on that. We've already found a building. I don't know where they're at in that process right now, but I will continue to work with them to, make that happen.
Just a quick follow-up with the lack of the size-wise of the Pine Belt Mental Health Center, other facilities, and the hospitals. Is there some type of avenue for the Sheriff Department to use?
So right now, there is no single point of entry. And what I mean by single point of entry is if Joe Smith, the patrolman, picks somebody up that obviously has mental health problems, that person just goes to the closest hospital. The perfect answer is to have a single point entry. And right now, we just don't. It's something that they've been working on and talking about, but it hasn't come to fruition yet.
Mr. Elias?
Yes. So I agree with Mr. Haley that mental illness is not a crime, and a jail is no place for those that are suffering from mental illness. All it does is agitate things. What we've done from a training standpoint is train our officers to better help them identify those that are suffering from mental illness. Now, having the resources to deal with that individual has become problematic. It has been for years. The can's been kicked down the road, and the only answers lie in funding from federal and state levels, and it comes from a medical standpoint, not from a law enforcement standpoint. We can continue to train. That's what we should do to help identify individuals that are in crisis and offer them resources. But as far as us being able to handle the medical side of it, none of us are trained to do that. That's just not in our scope. So I think that as a community, as a law enforcement community, we come together in hopes that we can get legislation passed to fund what's needed. The trips that Mr. Haley's talking about that they went on, I think that is great, but again, we have to have the funding to do it. Money is always the problem.
Do you think that's a possibility that the sheriff's department needs to have training in that?
Oh, absolutely, and we're doing that training now. We actually have an individual that's a captain on patrol that we sent to training for crisis intervention. He came back certified as a trainer and holds classes at our training academy, has been for several years now, training others in our agency and surrounding agencies. Yes, sir.
So that I was going to add to that. We would like to see all of our officers, CIT trained. Before I left transportation, probably 85% of my guys were trained because they were the ones that were going out and picking these people up. So we would like to continue that. We'd like to see all of them trained in that. But our local legislatures have done a phenomenal job with funding as pertain to this diversion center. They've allotted a bunch of funds for that, and it's rolling. It's just not open yet.
Mr. Elias,
Yes.
what do you believe is the biggest threat to our communities?
It's a tough question because there's a lot of threats these days. I think that decisions that we make, not only in electing an individual for sheriff, but other positions that are influential on the direction that a community goes. When you go back and learn from communities that have experienced catastrophic failures, where trust has been broken between law enforcement, between government, and a community, you understand how important each of these positions are to our peace, to our quality of life. You will see that I take that seriously. Transparency, accountability, regardless of the consequences, I stand strong when it comes to those issues.
Mr. Haley?
For me, I've chased drug dealers and drugs 3/4 of my career, and I've seen what it's done to families and children and people all over this Gulf Coast. And I've been told from day one as just a rookie patrolman that almost all crimes have some form of drug nexus. So if you ask me what I think is the biggest problems that we face, it's the drugs in this community. And we've done a great job, keeping the majority of it off the street, but I think we can do better.
Without a doubt, drugs are and have been a huge threat. But again, we have law enforcement in place and laws to enforce. The threat that goes beyond that is when that law enforcement loses the trust of a community. That becomes problematic. I commend those that are out fighting the war on drugs. I was asked by a 25-year addict, are we winning that war? Y'all know the answer to that. We're having a tough time, but I absolutely commend the efforts, and they will continue. We need to look for new and more creative ways to do so.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. This is going to be the last question before we go to live audience questions. Mr. Haley, your thoughts on the support you have received from your predecessor, Sheriff Troy Peterson, and how this can help your campaign.
Careers went in the same direction. And I guess I was about 15 years in, and he started to try to recruit me to come to narcotics because he knew I chased dope my whole career. It's what I lived for. And he knew what kind of narcotics agent that I would make. So I ended up doing that, and he showed me the ropes, and they're another place that I kind of followed in his footsteps. And anybody that knows Troy, he's just a good dude. He really is. But he doesn't pull any punches. So for him to openly support me, it's huge. I mean, it's the most humbling thing for me. And it's not just him. It's, leaders like him, like Sheriff Brissolera, Major Randy Cook, who is an icon here on the coast, to support me. It's humbling. I mean, I can't really say anything other than that.
Mr. Elias?
Y'all ready for transparency? Anybody smell anything fishy at this point? So you're looking at a guy that's here that was very close to Troy. My family, my kids called him Uncle T-Roy. Never went on a vacation without each other, never were on the boat without each other. I had a lot of faith in him. He had a lot of faith in me. That all stopped in one day with one business decision that we disagreed on, that ironically my opponent was involved in as well. It turned out terrible. I'll leave it at that. And the result is that from that day forward, I did not have his support. But it's very hard for anyone to understand when you have two guys standing up here that work for the same agency, that had the same opportunities, one of which was promoted to the highest rank in the agency, and all of a sudden, without any documentation, a clean personnel file, one who doesn't have a quarter of the experience is a better candidate for sheriff. Well, you said you have 4 years administrative experience,
That was
correct?
a good one. That was a good one.
Is it 4 years?
Yeah. I guess a quarter of administrative experience.
No, I'm speaking of administrative experience. I'm just
Yes,
asking.
yes,
You were
yeah.
promoted in 2019, correct?
That's correct.
So what month?
I don't.
So you have 19, 20, 21, and 22. 4 years as opposed to 15. That is what I'm telling you, where transparency and accountability comes in to play. Yeah. All right. Y'all listen, let me tell you what I told my boys. And I'm telling y'all this just so you understand. It's very difficult to understand. But at the end of the day, this isn't about me or my opponent or a seated sheriff or a past sheriff or who's endorsing who. It's about our community. It's about the problems we face in an individual or individuals that have specific plans to address those problems. Keeping all that in mind, y'all have to understand, and I've experienced it firsthand just as recently as the Dido Bazaar. I had a guy come up to two of our supporters, one of which was one of my teenage sons, and taunted him, told him some things that were racial, discriminatory, and I didn't hear it until afterwards. A couple of people told me what happened. But this is what I say to that, and this is how I calm my son down. Children are watching us right now. They want to see how they should act should they decide to run for office. And also, there's a lot on the line. My strategy is this: run on my merit, run on my abilities, specific plans. We are 42 days out from an election. And I'm hoping that you're hearing that I have specific plans. Visit our webpage, our Facebook page, watch the videos. But 42 days out from an election, there has been nothing but criticism and mudslinging against me and nothing to talk about the problems at hand. And I think that if we're going to do that, we do it all in one day, but we go ahead and move on and get on to our plans because the community is depending on us. We're applying for a job that serves the community. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Haley.
Are we at our closing, or what are we doing?
No,
here?
no, we're at the final question, but then I'm going to get a lot live audience questions afterwards. So,
Well-
but you have the rebuttal.
What was the question again?
The question was, Mr. Haley, your thoughts on support of that you've received from the
Okay, yeah,
predecessor.
he was rebutting that. No, I don't have anything to say. I will say this. Regardless of what my opponent says or what I say, when you run for office, and I don't care if it's for dog catcher or supervisor or whatever it is, you both deal with crap, and I'll just say it, from both sides. He's dealing with it, and I'm dealing with it. So it's not just one-sided, I can assure you. And we'll just leave it at that.
Final rebuttal.
Final rebuttal is this. Where it is one-sided is on our social media, for those that have seen it. You will not see that type of jargon on our social media because I tell them it's not productive. I told Matt this the other night at the bazaar. If you cannot control the narrative on your social media account, how in God's name are you going to control the narrative of a sheriff's office that determines whether we live in peace or we live in hell? It's not going to happen. It's just that simple. I don't know how else you elaborate on that any further. Just look at the 2 pages. You'll see the distinct difference. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm controlling mine and yours on my page. That's the difference.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? There we go. So I got chose to give the first question, and I'm going to give one that you both have an equal opportunity to answer, and then y'all can go from there. You both have 25 plus years of experience, you say, in law enforcement, and we all see that. We all know who you are. We both that, but we have to make a decision on which one of you is the most qualified, and what separates you from each one of your opponents. I think that's a question we all would like to hear.
If you want to go ahead, Mr. Haley.
You know, I think anytime you're choosing someone for a position of this caliber, you can say what you want, but it needs to be somebody that's been there and done that and not gotten their experience from books and magazines or TV. You need to have been there and done that. And I have worked my way through this entire agency, and I've been there and done that in every division. Every division. And I think that's what sets us apart. I mean, it's black and white.
Go ahead.
Y'all, I'm going to go through a few of our divisions, and not for my own good, but for the individuals that serve in these divisions. Apparently, maybe I'm missing something. Our training academy. When my opponent says that he has served in every capacity that there is, he's never served at the training academy.
That's a lie.
At our training academy?
I taught at your training academy.
What
This
did
was
you
before
teach?
you got there. I taught K-9 and criminal interdiction.
Just as I will show you my state file, I would love to see your state instructor file because it's not there. Our reserve division, our records division, dispatch, aviation, mounted patrol, which was for some reason done away with, but I can assure you we'll bring it back. Mississippi Highway Patrol just brought theirs back to help with crowd control. Community relations, IT, our school resource officers, and our SWAT team. He was a school resource officer.
Yes.
They take a special certification to be able to be claimed to be a school resource
Well, this
officer.
was before we had school resource officers.
So there wasn't a school resource officer. That's what I'm saying. It's a different job now.
Yeah, I worked in the schools.
There's specific training that it takes to gain the title or earn the title of a school resource officer that the state mandates. The only reason I say this to you is, at the end of the day, there's discrepancies, and that's fine. We're applying for a job that is a CEO of a company that has a budget of over $31 million. I have proven through my experience that I can handle that side of it. On day one, there's no getting ready for it. I can handle it. Being director of the training academy, the entire budget I handled. It was handled with the work of the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, having them on board for accountability. In addition to that, this notion that my experience of law enforcement came out of a book or off of television is nonsense. 19 years old, emancipated, and out on the street. As a matter of fact, I think, Mr. McGill, you asked the question, were we on television when you had your terrible accident?
I don't recall you there. I'd love
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll bring you the other officer that was there. And I can assure you that the days that I was on the street and did not know if I was going to go home, sometimes fighting for my life, was not on television. As they said on Cops, what you're seeing is real. You don't earn a certificate to be a law enforcement officer on television. I went through our training academy. I just don't understand that part. However, I will tell you that on paper, taking opinion and emotion out of the equation, the years of experience as an administrator, as a businessman, and as a law enforcement officer, I'm by far your best choice, and I appreciate any consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Haley, you get a rebuttal of that if you want.
So just to clarify for the next debate, the budget is 27 million. It's not 31 million. Are we in our closing now?
No, I got
Okay.
one more.
No, I
one
don't
more
need to.
live audience
I don't need to
question.
debate that.
Does anybody that's not associated with either campaign want to ask a live audience question? Okay. Mr. Boyd?
Okay, the sheriff's department budget is either 27 or 31 million dollars currently, but we're running, as we said, 65 officers down, for example. Does that mean we have a surplus in the budget currently because we're not paying those people? And if your budget on day one is 27 million, are you budgeting to fill those roles immediately or with who you have at the moment?
So, you want me to go?
Oh, go ahead.
So each person that works there has a pen, and those pens still exist even if there's nobody that's filling those pens. Right now, what we're currently doing is, or last I heard, people are working overtime, and they're paid from those monies.
Mr. Elias?
To answer your question, we turned in a surplus last year. Yes, where'd you go? Yes, sir, we did. And the frustrating part of that for me is that we have officers on the streets that need equipment that money could have been reallocated for. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million. Reserve officers that are having to buy their own weapons. They're not able to get jackets when it's cold. Those are things that we could redirect those monies, and while we're regrouping, determining how to fill those positions, instead of just turning it back into the general fund, put it to good use.
Okay, with that, now I'm going to give you guys as long as you want for the closing. I flipped the coin again. Mr. Elias, you're the first for the closing. You have as much time as you want because I've got the building for another 40 minutes. So.
Did y'all bring supper with you? I'll keep it brief. Yeah, we've talked about a lot. Y'all see emotions are high. I think that it's a very important decision to make. what I base that on is what I said earlier. When you look around this country and you see the failures that have occurred, we can't allow that to happen here. The equations that have caused those failures to occur, the factors in those equations have slowly creeped up on us. Now is the time to resolve them, not to point the finger of blame, but simply come to the table with solutions and solve them. You've heard me speak before, prioritization in spending. We have the money to do so much. We have the money to address our top priorities before we address frivolous things. There's things sometimes that just make my head spin. I don't understand it. And it's not just with our agency. This happens across the country. But again, we're better than that. When you wake up tomorrow, or when the next school year starts and your kids go to school and you don't see an SRO in the school, and you hear, well, we don't have the money for it, but you go by our work center and you see a hot rod sitting there. It's an antique car that they're building. It's got a Corvette motor going in it. They've spent over $50,000 on this thing so far. How is that going to address our problems? It doesn't. Those are the things that I'm talking about changing when we change the way we do business. I won't go on and deliver criticism after criticism, but you understand the point that I'm getting to. It's responsible spending. It's being responsible to those that we serve. Second Amendment, you won't find a stronger supporter of the Second Amendment than the man that's speaking right now. It's that simple. I will protect each individual's rights at all cost. No exceptions. At the end of the day, I will be accountable. I will be transparent, and I will represent you well. I stand ready to do that day one. If tomorrow we had a catastrophic failure and every national news media shows up here, every outlet shows up ready to cause chaos here on the coast, you're going to have someone at that microphone that will prevent it, that will deliver a message and represent you well. I humbly ask for your support. I thank you all for coming today. And y'all remember what I said about if emotions get high, keep it in check, find a place to handle it at 98.6, as my dad used to teach me, because children are watching and our community, our quality of life depends on it. If a sheriff acts like that, it's going to be no good from there. Thank you all again very much.
Mr. Haley?
One thing I would agree with is in what I've learned in this race is emotions do get high. You know, the people that are supporting me, they want me to win, and the people that are supporting Lewis, they want him to win. And feelings and emotions get involved, and I think that's just part of it. You know, I've never involved myself in anything political. This is my first go at it, and it's been interesting to say the least. I do want to thank Hunter Dawkins and Super Talk Radio and you wonderful people for taking your time out of this glorious Saturday, because I'm sure you couldn't have went out on the boat or done something fun. You chose to come here, which I think is wonderful. I will say that I firmly believe that I am the best candidate for this position. I'm the only one that has dedicated his entire career to the Harrison County Sheriff's Office. With no break in service. I've had no break in my law enforcement service from the beginning to the end. I've worked closely with law enforcement agencies across this coast for over 3/4 of my career, from the streets and not from a desk. I know the ins and outs of the agency. I'm familiar with its operations, its policies, and the challenges that we face. I've got hands-on experience and the ability to handle diverse situations, make informed decisions in high-pressure environments, and I've got the respect of my colleagues. With my experience and my background, dedication, and commitment to the Harrison County Sheriff's Office, I'm eager to put that to use as your sheriff. And I firmly ask for your support August 8th.
Thank you, gentlemen. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Hunter.
y'all both being here and for giving us the opportunity. And thank y'all again. Gazebo Gazette, we thank you all, the city of Long Beach, everybody that's helped produce this. Thank you.